Hi, my name is Sander de Recht and welcome to Fusion Q'nD, in which I try to solve a shot in the quickest and dirtiest way possible. This shot came to me via the Fusion forum at blackmagicdesign.com, and there was a problem with this shot. It is supposed to take place at dawn, and as you can see here and here and here, light was coming very quick. And because of that, the shot couldn't be done at actual dawn. As you can see, during the shooting of the shot, some measures have been taken to try to fix this, but well, they weren't sufficient. So as you can see right here, I'm playing through the shot. It's a shot at 4K. You can see that there's movement here. There are little splashes of light near the actress's fingers, and there are different ways to approach this. But since this is Fusion Q'nD, we're going for the quick and dirty way, because it's a shot of approximately 5 seconds max, 5-6 seconds maximum. So we're trying to come up with a solution that doesn't take too much time. First thing I noticed that there's a slight movement in the shot. It's not much, but since the shot was filmed with a camera with a rolling shutter, there's a slight wobble in the frame. We're going to try to fix this by stabilizing the shot first and then applying the fixes to the rest of the frame. First of all, Fusion has a tracker tool that will let you stabilize the shot in a basic way. It says here, Operation, Match Move, Corner Positioning, Perspective Positioning. What we're looking for here is the Match Move option. For this we find 4 distinct patterns as evenly distributed along the frame for the best possible result. This is a very distinct little pebble, so we're going to track that. Over here is a very distinct pebble as well. We're going to track this. And as you can tell, it's a heavily compressed shot, so the results will never be perfect. But we're going for Q'nD, quick and dirty. Over here. Well, this is a nice unrecognizable pebble. Oh, this is even better. It's a dark one. And let's add the 4th one over here. Oh, that'll do nicely. And it's a pretty gentle movement in the shot. Well, Fusion is doing its tracker magic right now. All the points that we're tracking are still in the frame. And we're done. Now we go into the operation. We go to Match Move and Background Only. And as you can see, the shot is moving up in the frame while trying to keep everything steady, because I have the position, the rotation and the scaling checked. So Fusion will try to keep everything as stable as possible. But as you can tell, when I go to the back of the frame in the beginning of in the first frame and last frame, you can see that because of the rolling shutter, there's a slight trapezoid deformation. But in the end, I hope we won't notice it because, well, we're doing a Q'nD version of it. Let's get back, because in the end, we want the piece that's missing on the top, we want it to return. To do this, we add a transform tool and connect everything. We right click, connect it to the tracker, to the steady position. I connect it to the steady axis. I connect it to the steady size. And I connect it to the steady angle. And then, here's where the magic happens, I invert the transform. This will make everything that was moved because of the stabilization, I move it back in position. The nice thing is that in between here, during this part of the line, everything will be a stable shot. And this is where we're gonna add our fixes. First of all, if you look at the image here, I'm going to proxy to speed up the playback a little. You can tell that the hand of the actress is not doing very much. She's moving ever so slightly, but she doesn't really do that much. So I think, since the focus during the shot and the viewer's focus will be on her face, because that's where the actual acting happens, I think we can get away with just making a still frame of the hand and use that in our fix. So I'm going to duplicate this loader, and then I'm going to use the frame. Let's see, in what frame? In frame 1 we can see most of the arm, so I'm gonna take frame 1 and make a still out of it. Here is where the arm will be from. Now here are two frames from different takes when the sun was still below the horizon. So you can see that it's slightly more red because of the red in the sky, and there is no sun sparks over here. So we're going to use this frame and this frame to paint out this part and this part of the image. To do this, we have to match up the image to each other. And what I'd like to do in a case like this is to use the merge as a way of putting one on top of the other in a very basic way, and then use a separate transform have to do this part, and then use a separate transform to line up the images. Because if you do it in the merge, there will be, because there is a downside by doing it in the merge. To see what we're doing, I'm gonna pull down the blend factor a little bit, and then while looking at the original footage, I'll use the pivot point over here to select this very distinct pebble, because here in this shot, in the original shot, the pebble is also visible very well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the transform tool to put the pebbles on top of each other, like so. And then, because I'm using the axis of the transform, I can use my angle here, and it will pivot around the image in question, the pebble in question. Because as you can see, for example, this pebble and this pebble is the same, so I want those to match up. So I have to scale the image a little to get it as close to each other as possible. Because they're from two different takes, it will never be perfect, but it will be close enough. As you can see, this one is still not matching up exactly. Oh, we're getting there. This will probably be sufficient. If I go, yeah, well, it's different, we knew that, but it's going to be close enough, I guess. So. I'm gonna try to line up the dark part of the image as good as possible. If I look back here, oh, there's a slight distortion, but it's fine. Because I want to use the hand from this shot and not from the fixed shot, I'm going to make a clean plate of this, a really clean plate. So I go into the paint mode, change to stroke, because multi-stroke will only paint a single frame. Go into stroke, go into clone mode. And since most of it will be covered by the original arm anyway, again, I'm going for the quick and dirty way. Of course, everything can be much nicer and better and more detailed, but we're going to solve a problem. We're not going for the visual effects Oscar. There, that'll do nicely. We're going from an arm like this to a girl without an arm. Of course, she looks very sad, because where is her arm? Anyway. One of the things we have to remember is that we only have to fix this part. So I'm going to add a very basic mask and start by using the dark part of the image as a reference. A small soft edge to put the two together, and as you can see, because the time of day was slightly different, there was a little more saturation in the shot. But if you do it like this, well, as far as I'm concerned, they're close enough. So what we have here now is a shot that's doing pretty well. I have to put it in. I have to turn off the proxy and turn on the high quality to see the actual result. And even though there's a slight wobble still, I think it will be good enough. If it isn't, it's very possible in Fusion to stabilize the already stabilized image. This will probably, if I look at this, yeah. The tracker did its best, but there is still some movement that distorts the end result. So since I noticed it now, let's fix it right away. Add another tracker. And since the movement is relatively small, I'm going to put two trackers in there. And that should be enough. You can see there's still a little bit of movement in there. As you can tell, Fusion's tracker is doing a very good job in tracking it again. We're going for the match move again, and this time we only do the position to prevent the tracker's small detail to create more angular movements. And as you can tell now, the image is almost perfectly still. It will never be perfectly still because of the rolling shutter, but it will definitely help. So now we have an extra stabilized image. And we can put the fixed part over here, and now we have to put the fix over there. Luckily I have another image right here. We'll do the same thing we did before. Use the transform to put everything into place. Here's the dark line again. Let's see. To make it easier on myself, I'll use the pivot again to match up the two of them. There we go. Well, like we did before, I'm going to use the merge to put them on top of each other, and then use the transform to do the actual positioning. Again, I'll use the axis, the pivot point, to help the two align. There you go. Oh, that's way too much. That's such a good. So, like this, they're almost lined up. The funny thing is, it's just not big enough to cover up the part that we need to cover up the most. So, again, I'll go into the paint tool. Again, change the stroke, change to clone. And just try to fill this up as quickly as possible. I try to avoid using this pebble because it's so distinctive. There we go. You see, you can tell immediately that I reused that. Oh, let's see if this is sufficient in this case. Oh, yeah, it's covering it up very nicely. Only at the end we need a little more. Oh. Let's see if that will do. Ah, we still need a little bit at this part. But maybe not. Again, we're going to use we don't have to match up exactly because this we're cheating our way into it anyway. Yeah, this will do. Another quick and dirty mask. So, to get rid of this. Let's see if this will do. Yeah. Again, a slight soft edge. To hide the seam. Make it look like the original shot as much as possible. And again, by copy pasting the brightness setting, the two items will match pretty well. Well, now there's our completely match moved shot. I'm going to use this transform to compensate for the additional tracker. Steady. Oh. I connect it to the second tracker to the steady position. I connect it to the second tracker's steady axis, and since that's the only thing I used, oh, there's still a slight part missing, and it probably has to do, yeah, with a tiny part that's missing here. Yes, I think this will be adequate. So now we have this shot here, this shot here, and it will move. Going back to proxy mode to speed it up a little bit. And it will move together nicely. Well, like I said before, there isn't much motion in the original arm. So we're going to put the still frame of the arm back into its original position by doing a very simple composite and then adding a polygon mask. Let's see. I'm going to do the basic shapes first. This part is going well. And again, it only has to look right. It doesn't have to be right to make a quick and dirty solution. Because one of the great things about this kind of visual effects is that because people will never consider a hand in the frame a visual effect, so no one will be looking for it. So even if there's a slight error on my part, people will never notice. And even though that's not the correct thing, sometimes we don't have the luxury of doing it the correct way. So let's see. Oh, if it's alright like this. this one I have to adjust a little bit. Then I'm going to remove the animation of this shot. Well, we can tell a little bit over here, but then again there is no soft edge yet. Ever so slight edge will make this work a little better. And the thing is, because in the original frame there's a hardly noticeable shadow, I'm considering adding the shadow on the right side. I'll do this by adding a double polyline and now select the inner polygon to done and the outer polygon to modify, and this will make a user selectable soft edge. It will feather the original in a subtle way. So you can so it will look like the hand is back again. Let me see. I think maybe this part is slightly too dark now. Yeah. So I'm going to remove that. So now this will look relatively natural. And because I want it to be slightly darker here, I'm going to put the gain down a little bit like this. So now we have the arm, a dark section here, a dark section there, no more light splashes over here, and it all matches the movement from the beginning to the end of the shot. I'm going to render it out now. And this will take a little while. This is a shot at 4K, and I'm running Fusion on an i5 from about 4 years ago, so it's not real time. But as you can see, it will be about 6 minutes. After this, I will be back. And we're back. I've rendered out the shot at 4K, and I did a small resize because I'm working at the 2K resolution on my monitor to see what we can do. Here's a real-time preview of the shot and the end result. Well, there's still a slight shift over here. But again, if you look at it in the total result, there's a lot of shifting back and forth anyway. So, like I said before, you probably won't notice that it happened anyway. If you still have a problem with the movement, you can do another tracking and stabilizing of just this part to get it even more still, so I can give it a try, because I still have to do one more thing. Like I said before, The original shot has lots of compression. You can tell right here there's lots of blocking from the compression. The thing is, because I use still frames for the rest, this part and this part is much cleaner than the original footage, because it's only a still image and Fusion doesn't render compressed. Well, if Fusion renders out, it doesn't create compression artifacts. So to more or less match the two, it's probably wise to add a little bit of noise to the image, because if you look over here, there's a lot of noisy footage as well. So by adding a little bit of noise in the image that I'm adding, the total result will be more even across the frame. And while I'm at it, I'm going to stabilize this dark rock as well, so these two things won't slide compared to each other. So I'm going to give that a go. Nope. Here we are at another version. And to see what we can do here is create a noise tool in the this is in the film grain. Let's add that in between the still frame and here as well. Thing is, the film grain looks really, really nice, and we don't want it to be nice. We want it to be quite rough, because it will have to look like compression artifacts when we're done. So we're going from this smooth part to this little bit of roughness. Make it slightly bigger. I'm going to render out a couple of frames to see the result. I'm at high quality, full resolution. And as you can tell, are things moving a little bit. You see, there's a bit of noise in there, and when that probably need to make it a little more apparent. And there's just a little bit of shimmering, and as soon as that starts moving, it will most likely match up pretty nicely with the rest of the shot. So I'm just gonna duplicate it as an instance. So if I change it here, it will change here, and it will change here as well, because the arm needs a little bit of this as well. It's very smooth. It needs to be a little more smooth than this. So I'm going to move it a little bit down, because this is the original and this is the fake hand we're using. Well, like I said, and you can tell here, if you watch this pebble, you can tell that the original artifacts make sure that it moves as well. Fusion does its best tracking this, but since the shape itself is changing because of the compression, it will never be a perfect fit. But we can do one more track of just the part that was drawing attention to itself. Earlier on in the render. And I took this part. Now, of course, I have to render it for the whole duration of the shot, of course. I'm going to skip to the end. And we're done tracking again. And as you can tell, there's indeed a very small amount of movement. And again, we're gonna invert that by connecting to the tracker's steady position. And put it there. And we put everything back in place. So now we have the film grain. You can tell if I turn off the film grain. Everything will be cleaner if I turn it off. But it won't match as well. So I'm going to render out another version of this shot. And I'll return when it has rendered. And we're back. I've rendered out the third version of the shot to compensate for this movement, and well, I messed up. The movement, as you can see, is even worse than it was in the second version, so I have to go back and fix it. What is better though is the amount of artifacts that were introduced by the noise, because as you can tell now it's still slightly different because there's still a lot of artifacts cringy, but the way the noise has added, it's still it's nowhere near as noisy or full of artifacts as the original, but it matches it pretty good compared to the first version. So what I'm doing now is I'm going back to the original. I removed the tracker there. I moved two trackers from here and here back to here and here, because this is where the focus of the replacement footage is. So this is where it has to match the best. And I've added a little bit of darkness over here so that the arm will stand out a little better. Because if I remove it, the arm floats and now it's there and the arm sits in the image the way we want it. So I'm going to render it out one more time And then I think I'll be calling it finished. Unless something really weird comes up, but we'll find out after the render. And we're back again. I've rendered out version 4 of the shot, and like I said before the break, I think I'm gonna call it finished for now. I've made a small preview, and as you can tell, there's still a slight movement back and forth. It's also visible over here, if you pay attention to it. But the whole idea of doing something quick and dirty is that you do it in a way that it won't draw attention to itself. Of course it can be better, of course it can be fine-tuned, but for something done in less than an hour, I think it's a pretty convincing way to fix a shot in a way that the people who will be watching the movie won't ever notice. I hope this has been useful for you, and I look forward to doing another Q'nD for Fusion shortly.